a show that tackles the big issues affecting the BVI and the rest of the Caribbean. Searches for answers to today's big questions and gives viewers a unique perspective on developing stories. Follow the big story with me, Kathy Richards, only on JTV. This show is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, Cyril B. Ramney Tertola Pier Park, NV Salon Spa Nail and Barbershop, the Wellness Center, Medical and Behavioral Health Clinics, Ticely Cross Deliciously Smooth Cider, HOV Medical, and Digicel. Sign up for Digicel Plus Home Light Bundles, faster internet, movies, and sports. This is The Big Story. I'm Kathy Richards. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this edition. On the set with me today, no stranger to the set, Mrs. Shayna Smith Archer. Welcome again, Shayna. You've become a permanent staple here.
Yes. This is one of my favorite spots. Thank you for having us as always.
Awesome. Well, we have to continue that conversation about the BVI Chamber of Commerce. It's no longer the Hotel Association, the Hotel Chamber of Commerce and Hotel Association. I got it right as it used to be. It's been a few months now that the division has taken place and the rebirth of a new brand.
Yes.
Well, the birth of a new brand has been ongoing. Some of us are still not so clear as to how all of this is happening and the objective behind it. If we can just do a little recap on this rebranding.
Great, that's a good place to start. So about 2 years ago, when the board of directors, we were looking at, how do we improve our operations as a business? Because even though we're a nonprofit as well as non-governmental organization, it's something where we still like to run our operations as best practices for any business. So one of the things we realized is that from the inception, 1969, the Chamber of Commerce and the Hotel Association got together. So it would have been that there were two mandates, albeit similar, because it's all business, all dealing with the economy. However, it's the workload, and the focus was something where several persons have confused that we were strictly a hotel association, but we had commerce in the name. And so there were businesses that were, let's say, professional services or retail and wholesale that didn't think that they could be members or should be members of the Chamber of Commerce. So those were some of the things that we started to factor in. And one of the other things that struck me was that when I look regionally, Chamber of Commerces are separate from the Hotel Association because, again, there's a large focus and mandate that comes with both, and there was something to be said about that. So what we did is we established a working group of persons within the tourism sector and asked them to, ask the people themselves, what is it that you want? And they embraced the idea of having a hotel and tourism association. So that was back in 2022. The decision was made by the board based on the findings. So May of this year, 2023, would have been when the Yachting Hotel and Tourism Association was launched. Hence, we had to go back now and rename as well as rebrand the BVI CCHA. So we still have the same mission, empowering, educating, and equipping businesses for their success and growth. The vision is still to be the proactive voice of business. So, we are just retooling. So one of the things now that we're currently working on in-house is to look at the new structure, because obviously before we had president of business, president of hospitality.
Yeah, so it's now narrowed
so
down.
Now we have to streamline all the operations. So those are some of the things that I'm working on behind the scenes, on top of all the events and activities that we're going to touch on today in terms of what we have planning for the rest of the year.
But before we go there, from what you said earlier, in the beginning, the two were separate. The Hotel Association and Chamber of Commerce were separate from.
Yeah, it was two different groups of persons, and again, as a way to consolidate resources, because we're talking about late late 60s, early 70s, they thought that we'd get together. And again, we've seen that in other areas, I think, across our community. So it's something where 54 years later,
yeah, it's
important to continue to look at how do we improve on what we have. And that was one of the reasons and the impetus, because, some persons thought about, it was a big breakup or some kind of breakaway.
Yeah, because you still hear those little things.
Yes. And I also want to clarify too that, this is something where lobby groups or advocacy groups like this are not in competition with any other group. That's the other thing, because I'm hearing, persons asking, what is the tourist board going to do? And it's like the tourist board is going to continue to do what it's supposed to do. And its primary focus is about marketing and promoting the destination. What's important about groups like the YHTA and the Chamber of Commerce is that industry needs to represent itself. Right? Just like you have BVI Finance, the Association of Professional Accountants, the Virgin Islands Architects and Engineers, we're not in competition with each other. All of us are here to collaborate on the same goal.
Each other.
Exactly. Because all of us want to see businesses develop and succeed. And as a result of that, our economy grows. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what industry, businesses are providing the goods, the services, the jobs, the taxes, as well as community sponsorship that we do every year. So we all have a very important role to play regardless of what lane we're in. And this is where we all have to work together amongst ourselves in the private sector and work in partnership with the government.
Okay, so how does it work now where you feed into the Yachting and Hotel Association and they into you?
Okay, so basically we are separate legal entities, but what we will have happening is essentially, what we want to see on our board going forward as directors is to have all our major industries represented. So whether it's a representative from the association itself or someone who's definitely a part of the tourism sector, those persons will be, and it'll be vice versa. So that's again how we plan to establish the partnership and, collaborate on events. One of the things that we were talking about as an example is the annual business awards that we do. So we have not done that since the hurricanes in 2017. But what I was speaking to the interim executive director, Sharon Flax Brutus, about was, the possibility, because we don't want to move away abruptly and, sort of disrupt the flow. So we still want to recognize persons that would have been normally under the hospitality arm of the CCHA. And again, we can do that by working together with the two groups and keep moving, keep the momentum moving forward. And I think to create even greater momentum, Kathy, because that's one of the things where the idea is when you hear about what other HTAs are doing in their communities to help educate and build a workforce in the tourism sector in the different countries. I mean, you heard the presentation by the keynote speaker, who was the CEO from, I think it was TCI's Hotel and Tourism Association, and the amount of work that they do. And again, they work alongside the government agency that's responsible for tourism promotion. So it's a win-win in my mind, and I really want to lay it to rest that persons can rest assured. I mean, as members, if you choose to be a part of any other association in addition to the chamber, awesome.
It's all fine.
It's
once
all
it works for your benefit.
Exactly.
Benefit. So in this moment and space now, as you are now the BVI Chamber of Commerce, some of your core work that you're doing now.
Okay, so what we are also now focusing on is establishing advocacy agenda, is what we're going to refer to it to. And it's more or less, these are the issues or concerns about business that we want to lobby, whether it's the government or, again, partner with other industry associations on. So how we set it up, we have 4 broad categories. We want to focus on economic development and diversification. I touched on this in my welcome remarks at the brand launch last month. And it was something for me in preparing for that when I looked at if the size of the economy, I think it was in 2022, was estimated to be 1.5 billion. And your top industries in terms of private sector, so I took out the public sector because obviously government spending would be included as part of your gross domestic product. And it was 1.3 billion. So it's something where we have diversification in terms of we have other industries apart from the financial services sector and the tourism sector, which are the two main ones. So the other areas, retail, wholesale, information and communications, technology, construction, education, healthcare, I was surprised because they're very significant in terms of the percentage of that figure. So what we have to do now is look at, where do we need to intentionally put the resources, whether it's through small grants, small business grants and loans, or, training. There are many things that we see happening across a region, again, through agencies like OECS and CARICOM, where, for example, they focus on what they call the creative industries. So this is fashion, entertainment, and the arts would be, again, considered industries. We tend to think of these not as, businesses just yet. It's sort of like a hobby, for when persons think about going and getting, becoming a fashion designer. But it is something where, these are all multi-billion-dollar industries across the world, and we are no longer in a sheltered space, I would say. Financial services has exposed the jurisdiction to basically the global economy. So there's no reason that other industries can't be developed, albeit not to the size, but we might surprise ourselves because what we have to look at is financial services, the market is primarily global. It's not local. So if I start to look at, what are the professional services, what are the retail goods that we can start to export? Because that's what we're doing. We're exporting financial services. So we basically take that principle and apply it to other industry areas. Also looking at agriculture. Our economy was developed from agriculture and fishing. So it's something where it's part of our roots. And everybody has to eat, Kathy.
Yeah. Is that a real dominant conversation among the entities that you...
Well, what we want to see happen now is that, first off, have a conversation around creating a comprehensive economic development strategy. Because what we want to see is that we're not just going to focus on particular industries without looking at the whole first, right? So one of the things that I'm researching is looking at, how do we get an economic study done? So we could really understand.
Yeah, I was just going to ask when and how fast you could get that done.
How are the opportunities? Where are our strengths? Where are our weaknesses from an economic standpoint? And where now we need to, again, put the resources in. Because when we look at places like Guyana now, and I think it's a CARICOM objective in terms of, I think it's 30% by 2030 in terms of cutting the food import bill into the region. So these are the things where we have to look at, again, regionally as well as globally, where we can stretch our economy into. And these are, again, business opportunities as well as job opportunities.
So while you do that studies and prepare to do that big, come up with a plan and
start the conversation
and formulate the strategies.
Yes.
What do you do in the meantime?
So what we're doing in the meantime now is, again, looking at from a local level, what are those, let's say, policy incentives that are needed to encourage business development. So, some of the ideas that have been spoken about in the past, and this is something where we're actually going to create the document where it's still in draft form, but we want to share it with members, get their feedback, and then go to the government with it, essentially to start now the formal conversations around, hey, how can we work in partnership to make these things a reality? So whether it's tax incentives, where when you start up your business, you are able to not have to pay payroll tax, for example, right, for your first 2 or 3 years. That's just putting that out there. Because one of the things for me is that you don't miss revenue you haven't collected before. Okay. So rather than after a business is established and probably paying taxes, it is something where it's probably less impactful. I'm not going to say it isn't impactful, but less impactful if we say, okay, in your first 2 years, that is revenue that you can take and reinvest in your business to get it to a place where you're able to comfortably pay all your statutory obligations as well as turn profit, have jobs, and reinvest back into it. So those are areas, pioneer status. That's a legislation. Hotel aid is another piece of legislation that would have been creating incentives for you to start businesses. So pioneer status is about, is this a business that doesn't exist? So you're pioneering something. Hotel Aid obviously was geared towards the tourism sector and encouraging whether it was local or international developers to be able to come in and start hotels and similar facilities. So these are things that we think need to be updated. So again, we'll be working with the Yachting, Hotel and Tourism Association on that, because again, these are the cross-cutting industry issues that all of us are going to be affected by. So that's that one area that we looking into. Education, employment and workforce development. That is something that is absolutely critical for business success, Kathy, because whether we import labor or labor is locally developed, it all has an impact on the economy. So that's something for us now as Chamber of Commerce that we're also going to be concerned about. And last week, I actually was invited to a meeting with the Workforce Development Unit to talk about, what are some of the ideas that they would like to collaborate with the Chamber of Commerce on. For me personally, Smith & Associates, my project management consultancy, was invited to speak with the technical subject teachers during professional day. And it was really interesting because, it reinforced for me the importance now of, again, industry partnering with the education system in addition to the labor system to say, how can we help develop interests in certain careers that are in the economy. So we don't want it to just be left to randomly someone becomes interested in wanting to be a structural engineer or they want to go into mechanics, because I think one of the things that still concerns me is that 30 years ago when I graduated from high school, persons weren't encouraged to go into vocational trades. Let's be honest, because financial services was coming in and it was all about getting the office job and not working outdoors anymore. But the lawyer and the doctor, they need a plumber, they need an electrician. So when it comes to job stability, this is something that's very important. And I shared with the teachers as well, at the same time that, the statistics from 2014 says that there were 1,600 plus jobs in construction. 1,300 of them were imported. So, and this is before the hurricanes. So I said to them, this is very conservative. So let's just say triple this figure and the ratio is probably even greater. So I say, but if we're not telling our students this, whether it's through industry doing in-class presentations or let's say working with labor department to do a vocational career fair every year, site visits, So I put it out there and I said to them, I say, whenever school year is just starting, whenever you guys need us, call the chamber and we'll organize, the different field trips, as it were, to actually give them the real world experience, even at high school level, because that is the only way, Kathy, we're going to develop the locally skilled workforce that we need, because employability is always one of the complaints that we hear from business owners where labor is trying to assist us with job placement and saying, we have local resources, we don't have to import somebody. But there's a challenge now as far as do they have the right skill set? And that's where it goes back to the education side of it, because, there's job training and that is different to education. There's a certain level of work ethic, literacy, life skills that we expect that when we hire somebody, even at entry level, that they already have, and then we take that and develop it for the particular job. So it was a really great discussion, both with the teachers as well as with the Workforce Development Unit team. So, we're waiting to hear back from them in terms of how we move forward. So, the rest of the year is going to be geared towards planning now some of the initiatives and activities that we can do. And I just want to plug here, persons may be familiar with Junior Achievement Program, and that is essentially an entrepreneurship program that was geared towards high school students that we've done in the past, and it is on the agenda to revive it next year. In the past, we partnered with the Department of Youth Affairs and Sports, actually. So, and it was treated as an after-school program. So I'm excited to see that the after-school program is back. Yes. So we're gonna, give that a chance to revive and catch itself, and have those conversations with them and see if it's something that the opportunity is there, or we have to look for something else. But we have to develop also the future business leaders. And again, not leave it to chance that, somebody who has a particular interest or hobby that they can commercialize and turn it into a business, that they know how to do these things. Just like with everything else in life, Kathy, you have to be taught.
Yes.
And knowing how to do business the right way is something that we have to start to teach from young. Right?
Two areas I want us to quickly touch on before we close off. And that is the constant cry that we hear, the lack of proper data collection. Our database systems are to the floor.
Yeah.
Some never even existed, and this takes us to the other area that I want you to talk a little bit about, is that of being able to help our businesses to come to a state where they can adapt to the technological era that we are living in.
Okay.
We can't do business today like we did 10 years ago because technology has advanced so much.
Not even 5.
Not even 5.
Not even 5.
And our inability to quickly move to that level, bring us to market standard, is woefully lacking.
So that is probably the biggest category of work that we're going to have on the advocacy agenda, which is regulatory efficiency is what we're calling it. So statistics. We always need information to make informed decisions. So what we're finding out is that the data is collected, Kathy. What we're having a problem with is it's not in a usable format. So every department in government is collecting data. However, majority of it is still on paper. So it means that
if you've been in Stone Age, paper is not it.
The digitization of government and the full-blown public sector reform is going to address a lot of those issues, right, from the public sector standpoint. E-commerce, the legislation for that was passed. I think there's still some other things to be put in place to be able to, again, bring the public services up to speed for the 24th century in terms of, businesses being able to, whether it's to file applications, renewals, make payments, inquiries in terms of, again, wanting if I wanted, like, let's say the 2022 GDP report. That is something for me I should be able to find on the government website. So we've had conversations with the Central Statistics Office, and that's something we're going to continue to follow up on because, whether it's quarterly reporting at the very least to start, we would love to see that because, business owners need to be able to be having, get access to the real-time information to be able to make decisions. And years behind now, where some of it is still, is really a big challenge. And even the census is an important exercise that's happening now for businesses because, again, we need to understand who our target audiences are when it comes to potential customers or businesses. And we have not had one in over 10 years. And a lot of the trends were disrupted first with the hurricane and then with the pandemic, where your population shifted drastically, but we don't know how. Right? So that exercise is something that we're going to be keenly watching to see when it's completed.
I think more than just watch, I think the Chamber can play a really, really major role in helping to push that forward because remember, times are not like before where you could take your time to change to a certain system. Technology is rapidly changing.
Yeah.
By the time you click your finger, it's something new, something different, and the whole algorithm is shifting. So if you're going to take 4 years to come up with a strategy to put forward, when that strategy comes forward, it's outdated. It's outdated. It's of no use. So we stay behind for too long.
And that's one of the things where, again, as a voice of business, we want to continue to say very loudly and clearly that for us to move forward as businesses, there's a certain environment that we need that has to be business friendly, right? It can't take 6 months to get a trade license approved. It can't take 6 months to get a work permit approved. It's one of those things that we have to still deal with persons having to employ persons from abroad in addition to developing the workforce. It's like we can't stop one to deal with the other because, real-time businesses need people in them to work in order for us to be successful. So, we want to see the digitization and hear more regular updates about the public sector reform. Another concern for businesses, especially micro and small businesses, is about the banking services.
Oh boy.
You know, those are things that we at the chamber can, you know, speak to firsthand in terms of, you know, the process to get a credit card, to be able to pay bills online or purchase services online. It's something that's a challenge for us as a non-profit organization status. And again, these are things that we have to know, take into account that 40 years, 30 years ago didn't exist. But this is the current, you know, circumstances, and we need to see our banking services evolve as well, and to make it easier for the smallest business person to be able to do the same things as the large business,
yes.
You know, because again, this is how we make basically a equity for businesses, and those are the things where for us to, you know, we want to make sure no business is left behind. Because oftentimes we don't think of self-employed persons as business persons that are contributing to our over $1 billion economy.
Yeah.
You know, because once their earnings are registered, they're contributing their taxes, they are employing persons, they are the backbone. You know, because without small businesses essentially waking up after hurricanes Irma and Maria and saying we're going to rebuild, our country would look a lot different 6 years later.
Awesome. Well, on the topic of banking, we will definitely have to continue that conversation, because right now in this season, banks, it's a conversation, a big public conversation, and that must be had. But with the clock on us right now,
well, Trade Expo,
quickly,
Trade Expo is next month, the 20th and 21st of October. So it's a Friday and Saturday. So there are still booths available. So persons can go to our website, bvichamber.org. You can still type in CCHA for the time being, but bvichamber.org is the new website address, and they can find all the information on the events in terms of registering, as well as encouraging persons to be a sponsor. It's free to the public, in case persons were wondering. So we've never charged for this event, and we're going to continue that tradition. Okay. And it's going to be at the sports complex, 10 to 6 for the 2 days. So again, if persons have any questions about it, whether it's to be a sponsor or an exhibitor, they can call us at the chamber office, 345-3513, or send us an email at info@bvichamber.org. And I think I touched on everything.
Yes, and more.
and more.
And more. Yes. As always, thank you so much for sharing with us here.
Thanks for having us.
It's always an educational moment when you sit in these chairs. And I know it's not only for me, but the general public, you know, are pulling so much from these conversations. And I wish the BVI Chamber of Commerce every success.
Thank you.
We look forward to you continuing to be that hard push to make sure that we as a country get to where we should be. Definitely. Here in the Virgin Islands. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this edition of The Big Story. I'm Kathy Richards.
We know that where you choose to bank matters, and it is your vote on what your funds do in strengthening our community. As your official Bank of Paradise, we invest and support the lifeblood of our economy by helping in the realization of personal goals for homeownership, education, and entrepreneurial visions, which support small businesses. We make it our place to connect with persons and worthy causes, and we have been doing so for more than 30 years. Where your money goes and what your dollars empower are your choice. And we thank you for choosing us, a bank that gives where it matters the most, for you, for our community, and a happier tomorrow. The National Bank of the Virgin Islands.
Everyone looks to the future, but no one truly knows what the future holds.
The number of people under the age of 20 with type 2 diabetes could increase by 49% by 2050. Let it be known that we all have a 30% chance of developing hypertension.
Globally, more than 300 million people of all ages suffer from depression.
More than 60,000 young adults aged 20 to 39 are diagnosed with cancer each year. Obesity leads to problems such as stroke, heart disease, and kidney failure.
No matter your race, age, or color, we are all at risk.
These diseases can be managed or prevented if caught early.
but with the right medicine and the right doctors to keep us on a path to live a robust and healthy life.
We will live well.
Plug into Digicel Plus and get even more entertainment with Disney Plus included. The best of Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and National Geographic all in one place. Whenever you want, plug into Plus to enjoy Disney Plus and much more with a home fiber bundle. Sign up today. Digicel Plus.